other books. Hope you enjoy it. Pretty soon, Charlie drifted into a dream world of his own. It was a world of comics, and his favorite character was Spider-Man. This was because Spidey was strong, apart from being able to fly with ease, and he could also apprehend villains before they struck. Charlie popped the last fish finger into his mouth, and he wondered what he was going to do for the rest of the evening. As soon as Jane had finished washing up, she sat back in her favorite armchair, and she picked up a heavy novel which covered her face, and then she dissolved into its pages. Charlie didn't hold it against her. He often found the world too hard to cope with, and he returned to the safety of his comics. Charlie woke with a big yawn and a stretching of arms, and it took him a few seconds to realize that there was no school today, or for the unforeseeable future, the foreseeable future. And then a delicious chocolatey glow of happiness spread through him. He had so much time in front of him that he was exciting and frightening at the same time. Tinker woke to hear his dad getting ready for work, and he couldn't believe that he was going to be having his first lying in ages. He couldn't wait to fall back to sleep. It was a rare moment of peace. As soon as the door slammed shut, hard enough to shake the family photos off the television, Tinker closed his eyes and he tried his best to fall asleep. Even though he was tired, his body was wide awake. After 10 minutes of tossing and turning, he gave up and headed for the shower. Tinker had the quickest shower of all time, and then he sat at their large oak table and he slowly ate his cornflakes. They were his favorite. It was so quiet in the house he wasn't used to it that it made the alarm clock sound as if it was a ticking bomb. Tinker began to think of Charlie and how he was doing on the first day of the holidays, and he spooned a gigantic pile of cornflakes into his hungry mouth. Tinker looked up at his dad's medals, which were shining like a shrine. He couldn't stand it in the house, or should that be museum, any longer. He looked out through the blinds and he was pleased that it wasn't raining, and there was a hint of sunshine peeking through the clouds, like a shy schoolboy. It was a positive omen. It was time for action, he thought to himself. He put on his sneakers and opened the front door, and he stepped out to face the day. God bless, please sub me. The day with conviction. He only had one place to go, and that was Charlie's. He had no idea what they were going to do, but he knew that it would be fun. Hello, viewers. I'm reading my book, Charlie. Please sub me if you like it. Charlie met him as he sat on his gate waiting for the day to begin. Hi, Charlie. How you doing? He asked. I'm great, said Charlie as he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. What shall we do today? He said. Tinker had to think for a moment. Do you like fishing? He asked Charlie. Charlie didn't have a clue, as he'd never done it before, but he was willing to give it a try. They cut through the side streets, stepping over dripping beer bottles, and walked over stained, discarded mattresses, but nothing could dampen their enthusiasm for the day. They were free, and they had 6 weeks of fun and adventure in front of them. The sun was coming out and drying out all of the puddles before their eyes. They cut through the woods until they came to a large-looking pond and reservoir. It was peppered by a group of men and young boys who were sitting on the bank with their rods in the water, patiently waiting for a catch. We don't have a fishing rod, said Charlie. Are we going to catch anything? He said. Don't worry, said Tinker, who always had a trick up his sleeve. I've thought of something, he said. They sat on the river bank and Tinker rummaged in his bag, and he pulled out a broken child's fishing rod with a net. It wasn't very impressive, but it might work, thought Charlie, as they sat on the bank and as the rod dipped into the glistening water. It was very relaxing and calm. But after half an hour, Charlie's fertile imagination began to wander. He could see the other fishermen with their rods in the water, and they were leaning back and pulling with all of their might. They were obviously catching something big, while Charlie and Tinker were just staring at the ripples and feeling sleepy. The stillness of the water and the sun beating down was zapping their strength, and concentration, and just as they were both starting to doze, a big splash brought them back to life. Look, said Tinker, it's a fish, a big one. It didn't matter that they had no idea what kind of fish it was. All that mattered was that it was twisting and turning inside their net. It was theirs. The fish glistened in the sun, and its silky skin looked as smooth and beautiful as ancient marble. Charlie felt guilty as it opened and closed its mouth and gasped for air, and it began to panic. What shall we do? What shall we do? He asked Tinker, who was the leader of the two. He knew that he had to appear knowledgeable even though he wasn't on everything, especially fish. We have to have a good look at her, he said, looking uncharacteristically serious and wise. Charlie nodded even though he didn't understand. They didn't know what kind of fish it was, but it was beautiful. They pulled the fish into their fishing nets and they looked amazed at its popping eyes and gasping mouth. What shall we do with it? Said Charlie, feeling guilty and worried as it gasped and flapped on the river bank. We can't kill it, said Tinker, and Charlie breathed a sigh of relief. The other anglers on the river bank, who had previously paid them no attention, now turned their heads towards them. Tinker gently scooped the fish out of the net as it was like holding a newborn baby. It was as slippery as an eel and as hard to hold onto as jelly. Please submit, viewers, if you like it. Let's send it back home, said Charlie, as he slowly lowered the glistening fish into the cool water. It wasn't easy letting it go, but it was the right thing to do. That's a beauty you've got there, said a man in his 50s who had been observing them from his stool on the river bank. He was dressed in a green raincoat and green wrinkled wellies. He had a round, jovial face with a fat, disjointed boxer's nose and cracked yellow teeth. Thanks, said Tinker as he watched the fish swim away to freedom. There was something about the man which gave Tinker the shivers. The man was trying too hard to be friendly and nice. As if it wasn't his nature, thought Tinker. Charlie watched the fish swim away in wonder. It was magical, and he wished he could watch it forever. That's a funny rudge you've got there, said the man, who introduced himself as Bob. You should come over and look at some of the cool tackle I've got, he said with a big fake smile. Charlie was all into walking over, but Tinker stopped him, who was more worldly wise. Sorry, mister, we've got to go now, said Tinker, as he brushed the dirt off his once clean trousers. No problem, said Bob with a flash of a frown. Maybe the next time, he said as he extended his hand to Tinker, who had no choice but to shake it. Bob's hand was as cold and clammy as a dead fish, and Tinker felt a cold shiver pass through him. Yes, please. Bye, said Charlie as he walked away under the burning sun. Hang on a minute. Yeah, I read as I like. Bob was a tough character and he was an orphan. He had been in and out of care homes all of his life and he had seen the worst that humanity had to offer, and it had changed him. In fact, he didn't like most people and he trusted no one. He loved to fish and he loved the solitude and the quiet. It was the only place where his dark thoughts left his mind temporarily like a bad debt. He viewed the other anglers with contempt. They were boring busybodies as far as he was concerned. Bob was different, a survivor, and he kept his thoughts to himself. Bob liked the young lads, as he called them, and he was determined to enter their world, one way or another. They reminded him of when he was young. Bob pulled his hand away against his better instincts, and he smiled a fake, lopsided smile. I'll be seeing you, lads, he said. I have lots to do. They waved him goodbye, and then when he was a safe distance away, Tinker said, I hope that we won't be seeing him again soon. Or like ever. Why? Said Charlie, surprised. He seems friendly, he added. Friendly, said Tinker, who nearly choked on his gum. He wasn't friendly, he was creepy. Charlie frowned. He knew that there were bad people in the world, and he just didn't know how to spot them. He also knew that Spider-Man wouldn't stand by any bad things happening, and he wished that he could be more like him. You need to be more careful, said Tinker, as they walked across the fields. The sun was dimming and grey clouds were beginning to appear as they were blotting out the blue of the sky like a depression. At first there was only a single spot of rain, and then it multiplied quickly, as if it was falling from a giant waterspout in the sky. They ran for cover, but the nearest trees were 100 yards in the distance, and before they knew it they were drenched. Run, Charlie, said Tinker, and they headed to the nearest tree to take shelter. They made it just before the first stab of lightning hit the tallest branch of the tallest tree, and it fell at their feet, smouldering and burning. Thank you, viewers. Please sub me if you liked it. I'll be reading more later.